If you've watched Top Gear, you've probably seen this bucket. It's called a Peel P50 and it's utterly ridiculous. It's the smallest production car ever. And no, Clarkson's P45 is not a production car, that's a one-off road registered quad bike with number plates. Very funny sketch, but don't go correcting me in the comments, oh actually Jeremy Clarkson built a smaller car on Top Gear. No, it's not a production car. The P50 is still the smallest production car of all time. But why did they make something so ridiculous? Well, our story goes back to the late 1940s, which is actually pretty close to when the car's design first originated. And this is because I'm not 90% of YouTubers who'll start this story by telling you when the car was invented and what a car is, and then some irrelevant shit about Henry Ford before going into the story, and then referring to cars as automobiles because it makes you sound smarter. Yes, the invention of the automobile. Well, no. So where did the P50 come from? That's what you're here for. Well, came from the Isle of Man. There we go. No, it's more to it. So, the Isle of Man, it's not famous for a lot. They've got a crazy motorbike race and the Peel P50. But Peel seems like it started out in life as a bit of a company with an identity crisis. You see, they don't know what to make. First, they decided, let's make fibreglass motorbike fairings, not the whole motorbikes, just the panels. But then they got bored of fibreglass motorbike fairings, and the founder, Cyril Carnell, he decided, actually, no, let's not do fibreglass motorbike fairings because my true calling in life, I've always known this, my true calling in life has been somewhat nautical. My true purpose in life is to create boat hulls. So Peel Engineering then moved into boat hulls. But after a while of their showboating, they got bored, and Mr. Carnell decided, you know what? I actually don't like boats. Never did. Not one bit. So what I'm going to do now is, of course, solve one of the most pressing issues of the 1960s. It's very ambitious. And this is a huge issue that really needed solving. How is it that I can combine the comfort of a bicycle with the ownership cost of a car, all whilst looking like a complete idiot when you drive it? It's a tricky thing to do, but Peel Engineering set about making the smallest car in the world to solve this problem. You know, as you do, get up in the morning, have your coffee, invent the smallest car in the world, normal daily activities. But it's going to be a bit of a challenge to make the smallest car of the world. So, first of all, the safety. But they had a genius solution to this. The genius solution was being in the 1960s, and because it was 1964, safety hadn't actually been invented yet. So that is all good. But what about where do you put the engine? In a normal car, it's pretty simple. You put it in the front, the middle, or the back. But the P50 is no bigger than its driver. The front of the car is where the driver's feet are, and the back of the car is where his arsehole is located. Perhaps if the P50 didn't cease production after just 2 years, later models would have combined the exhaust pipe with some sort of fart vent for a more comfortable cabin environment. Because imagine what that tiny, unair-conditioned, poorly unventilated box would smell like after a few summers. Ugh. Perhaps the flatulence could have been burnt to some sort of alternative fuel source. It's good for the environment, you know. So, where on the Gassy Express do you put the engine? Well, you have to put it underneath, but it'll have to be small as a result, and that means that you'll have very little power. Power to the Peel P50 therefore came from a Decavet 50cc 4.2 horsepower engine, which might be able to win a drag race with a lawnmower. And just for comparison, most rental go-karts have around 12 horsepower, although most rental go-karts are also much heavier than a Peel P50 because the Peel P50 weighed just 52 kilograms. An original Mini has about 30 horsepower. So, with the engine sorted, how does it seem drive to the wheels? Well, any normal car would use drive shafts, but the P50, there's no space for that. But luckily for Mr. Carnell, they had just the solution to this problem as well. You see, in 1456, the motorbike was invented by John Motorbike, and motorbikes drive their rear wheels with a chain. This is much less efficient than shafts, but much simpler and much more compact. So naturally, this was how the fart box was driven as well. This came with a disadvantage of the car not having a reverse gear. If you want to reverse, you get out, pick it up with a chrome handle at the back of the car and pull the car backwards. To save weight, the car also had just one headlight, one door and one windscreen wiper. But the single headlight also made the car faster at night, because if it had two, because LEDs were not a thing, the engine was so underpowered that the alternator strain on the engine of two halogen lights would have significantly slowed the car down when you switched them on. So it didn't have enough engine power for two lights, really. So, what is the purpose of the Peel P50? Well, it's simple. For European cities with small roads and very limited space for parking a proper car, the Peel P50 seems perfect. Now, given that it's a British car, it assumes they are thinking of London in particular, but I don't think they thought of a small little problem. It's called the tube. Any city big enough to warrant driving around in a microcar is also big enough to have commuter rail services. And given that the Peel P50 had a top speed of 60 kilometers per hour that it could achieve in approximately never, it's a lot faster to just get on a train or a bus or even ride a bike. In fact, even walking would be faster and more comfortable than commuting in a Peel P50. You'd also look like a lot less of an idiot in the process too, taking any of these other methods of transportation, or just getting a proper car and having to suffer looking for a park. Luckily, the Peel P50 was set to be forgotten by the world and lost to history, as it deserves. But then, unfortunately, in 2007, along came a man named Jeremy Clarkson, and he had an idea. What happens if you drive a Peel P50 through the BBC offices? So naturally, he got a Peel P50 and drove it through the BBC's offices, and he drove it around. Hooray! We've finally found an actual use case for a Peel P50. If you want to get into a news studio with a car and then drive around in it, get a Peel P50. It really is the best car for this job. Unsurprisingly though, the Peel P50 did not sell well because it turned out that only 50 people in the UK actually had a need to drive around the BBC's offices on a daily basis, and that meant that Peel Engineering didn't make a great amount of money selling P50s, and as it would end up turning out, the 50 in P50 refers to the fact that it couldn't get any more than 50 sales. But not to be discouraged, Peel Engineering decided to make a new car, and this was going to be even better. You see, they knew exactly the problem with a Peel P50. How do you make a Peel P50, but make it so it's unable to fit in an office, have worse performance, all whilst being about 10 times more embarrassing to drive? Now, this was even more ambitious than the Peel P50. 10 times more embarrassing? That was going to be a tough thing to pull off. Well, the engineers at Peel Engineering, they're truly amazing. They had a solution to that as well. The Peel Trident. It was enlarged to be a two-seater, so you could embarrass your friend as well, and it had a glass bubble canopy on the top as the way of getting in, so everyone could see you driving around in this thing. It'd also make it so the interior would get much hotter, which would improve the level of stinkiness on the inside, which I guess they were thinking about, in the future we could maybe use this as an alternative fuel, as I mentioned earlier. But power came from the same Decavet two-stroke 50cc engine, but the car now weighed 150 kilos. That's 3 times as heavy as before, meaning performance was naturally much worse. And that's the unladen weight. Because it had 2 seats, it could get even more comparatively heavier than a fully loaded Peel P50. The geniuses at Peel Engineering had really mastered their craft, and the results were astounding. The sales figures were even worse. So with Peel Engineering seemingly so successful at making impractically small cars, their next step after these 2 huge sales victories was clear. They needed to make a car that was about 5 times heavier, which is still very light, and it actually looked good, and it had the front and the rear subframes and the engine from a Mini, meaning it actually had a bit of power too. Naturally, of course, they only managed to sell 25 of them. But after all this, Mr. Cannell had a genius idea that nobody had ever thought of. What if Peel Engineering as a company decided to do something that they've never done before? Something truly groundbreaking. Something that will change the world forever and put us in the history books to be remembered for generations. So naturally, they started making motorbike fairings and fibreglass boats again. And they keep making fibreglass fairings and boats until 1976, when Mr. What's-His-Name decided to try another new radical shift for Peel. What about if instead of fibreglass fairings and boats, what if we made nothing instead? So Peel began manufacturing nothing starting from 1976, and that's what they've been the most successful at. They've been making nothing every year since then. And that is the story of Peel. But what about the story of Subaru's last world rally car? Well, click on this video here to find out about that.